In the square, many townsfolk have already gathered. The laughter and cheers of each individual radiating throughout. The older residents still remembered how last year the prince, in celebration of the end of the month of the demons, named the first day following as the Victory Day. On this day, the entire town not only had a holiday, but a grand bonfire banquet would also be held in the central square. The new residents who had heard about this celebration all chimed in, enjoying the hard-earned moment of peace. By the time the sun had reached its horizon, the square was filled with people. Soon, the prince made his appearance at the center stage. The overwhelming cheers erupted. People around excitedly raised their hands, shouting, "Long lives the prince!" The fourth prince smiled, waiting for the people's cheers to subside, and proclaiming loudly, "Once again, they have triumphed over evil." The prince once more thanks everyone for their contribution to this land. This glory belongs to them. It belongs to everyone who has shed sweat and blood for the border town. The prince's steady and emotional voice, as if endowed with magic, clearly reached the ears of every resident. The prince continued, "Evil has not been completely eradicated, it will return sooner or later. But no matter how many times the enemy comes, as long as they are united and work together, victory will ultimately belong to the border town." The prince raised a glass of red wine. "Now, let them cheer, let them raise their glasses to celebrate this hard-won victory." Cheers reverberated across the square, everyone waved their hand to pay respect to the prince. Next, it was time for the Starflower Troupe to take the stage, and many excitedly whistled. Anna, standing by, held a thin black flame in her hands, cutting the wood into pieces, and then directly used the wood to ignite a soaring bonfire. Seeing the witch's power, the onlooking crowd did not feel fear. Instead, they loudly shouted her name. Whole lambs were roasted over the bonfire, and the atmosphere on the scene reached its climax. Everyone happily waved their flags, enjoying the food and drinks, while celebrating this hard-won victory day. Back in the Lord's castle. Just like a year ago, the castle's evening feast belonged to the witches. Compared to the last time when only 5 witches participated in the barbecue feast, this time it was much more lively. Not only did all the initial witches attend, but Maisie, Lucia, Agatha, Spear, Paper, and newly joined Summer were also here. Plus members of the Slumbering Isle. The total number reached 25. Agatha, eating delicious food, said she thought this was a waste of time, but she kept putting things into her mouth. Roland handed her a glass of red wine and told her to eat slowly. He told her that a balance of work and leisure was more efficient. Defeating the demon did not depend on a day's leisure, and even if they failed, they had at least enjoyed the beauty of life. Agatha gave him a look, took the red wine, and continued to enjoy the food. Wendy pushed a gigantic cake, dividing it piece by piece among everyone. Observing the warm scene before him, Roland felt quite gratified. After striving for over a year, the transformations in the Western Territory were gradually coming to light. Whether it was the enthusiastic cheers of the people in the square during the day or the joyful smiles on the witches' faces now, all were rewards for his efforts. As the bonfire slowly extinguished and the time approached midnight, Roland had Nightingale and Ashes escort Manhwa and Summer home respectively, while he went to the second floor of the castle, waiting for Anna's appearance. He decided to take this step proactively, rather than waiting passively, or, should we say, prolonging it. The silver-white moonlight shone into the castle through the windows in the corridor. With this gleam of light, he saw Anna's figure, a sight seeming so familiar, as if he was brought back to last year. Roland didn't speak but walked forward and took her hand, heading to the 3rd floor. Once back in his bedroom and the door closed, Roland took a deep breath and turned around. Just as he was hesitating about how to begin, Anna had already kissed him. Roland then brought out a gift from behind him. It was a heart-shaped magical stone, inlaid with a golden edge, and from the top hung a thin red cord. This was a combination of tracking magic stones, formed by solidifying the Pathfinder stone and Locator stone together with magic. Roland put the tracking stone around Anna's neck, telling her this way, no matter where Roland is, Anna can use it to find him. Anna seemed to realize something, staring blankly at him. He gently cradled her cheeks, asking word by word, "Will you marry me, Anna?" Anna's emotions remained serene. After a long while, Anna finally nodded and replied, yes. Everything that followed was so natural, the emotions that had been brewing for a long time broke through the last barrier. Not much can be shown here as I don't want to get demonetized, feel free to check out the chapters yourself. Anyway, back to the story. Anna, resting on Roland's arm, leaned against him like a kitten. Anna whispered softly, she was so glad to have met His Highness. Roland looked at Anna, telling her to just call him Roland from now on. Turned out that Roland had never heard Anna call him by his name. Anna softly called Roland's name. He tickled Anna's earlobe, making her laugh. Roland then sighed, saying that this should be his line. He could never have imagined meeting such an outstanding girl in the past. For Roland, sometimes he even felt a sense of unreality thinking about it. Anna remained silent for a moment, moving closer to him, telling him she was here, and she will not go anywhere. These words instantly stirred his memories, recalling the time she had said the same thing to him before. Scenes of their shared memories appeared in his mind. Emotions are indeed marvelous, he thought, seemingly some words can make one feel an incomparable warmth inside. This time, the silence lasted longer. When he thought Anna had fallen asleep, Anna's voice rose again. Anna stated that she was a witch and that witches could not conceive. Anna whispered, Roland will face many troubles in the future. Roland confidently replied that he was not afraid of trouble. In fact, compared to the impending divine war, all these were nothing. Initially, he had been contemplating resolving the issue of succession through the new system, but the information brought by Agatha completely shattered his plans. The divine war determining humanity's fate was imminent. If they couldn't defeat the demons, all kingdoms would be obliterated. Compared to this, succession issues are not worth considering. Roland told Anna that he had been somewhat worried before, fearing that Anna would use this reason to reject him. However, Anna said that she wanted to be with Roland, whether she was a witch or not. Hearing her response, Roland couldn't help but laugh. Right, since he had met Anna, she had always been straightforward, never beating around the bush, always expressing her thoughts to him directly. They chatted for a bit, turned off the light, and the night was still long. The next day, Roland didn't get up until the afternoon. He looked towards the pillow. Anna was nowhere to be seen. Just when he thought that everything that happened last night was just a dream, he saw a few strands of long silky hair left on the pillow, and a faint fragrance came from the side of the bedding. Suddenly, Anna's voice rang above his head asking him what he was doing. Roland looked up, feeling a bit awkward. Anna smiled and placed the plate in her hands on the bedside table. The way she walked and her movements seemed a bit unnatural. Anna looked at Roland, asking him to get up quickly and finish his breakfast, as there was still work to be done today. Roland asked Anna if she didn't want to rest for a few more days. Anna seriously responded that they still have demons to deal with. Since Soraya and Miss Agatha are working so hard, she cannot slack off. She smiled slightly. You too, Roland. After breakfast, the prince came to the office in high spirits. Pushing open the door, he was surprised to see Tilly sitting at the desk waiting for him. Tilly smiled at him, saying Roland seemed to have had a nice dream. Roland couldn't help but touch the corner of his face. Tilly came to say goodbye today. Roland was stunned. Is Tilly going back? Tilly got up and walked to the window. She has been here for a long time. Although she has been in contact with the fjords by letter, she has to go back. Now that the month of the demons has ended, she has fulfilled the purpose of her visit. Roland, in a last-ditch effort to persuade her to stay, asks Tilly if she could move to the Western Territory. The south bank of the Crimson Water River has a vast expanse of vacant land, enough to accommodate all the witches. Tilly sighed, saying that they had already discussed this issue. It's not a problem of lands. It seems that she had made up her mind, Roland thought helplessly. This was not good news for him, but he hoped that Tilly could wait another week before leaving so he could prepare some things for the witches of the fjords. Tilly curiously asked what they were. Roland said, textbooks, teaching materials, and some practice questions. This could save Tilly the trouble of making their own copy, and this way it provides a better learning effect. Additionally, he will give her some revolvers, in case they encounter enemies carrying the stone of God's punishment. It could serve as self-defense. Also, they need to bring a couple of steam engines, which are very convenient for their daily tasks. Tilly was silent for a moment and said thank you. Then Roland smiled at Tilly, expressing his hope that she could witness the establishment of a city of Neverwinter with him. In the evening, Wendy takes a hot bath and returns comfortably to her bedroom, only to find Nightingale sitting by the bed, holding a textbook on her lap and seemingly lost in thought. Wendy sits next to her and asks what's wrong. Nightingale slightly turns her head and looks at Wendy. Seeing Nightingale's empty gaze tightens Wendy's heart. Wendy remembers this gaze from when they first met. Back then, Nightingale wandered alone on the streets where snow was fluttering, completely unconcerned with the snowflakes covering her shoulders. Nightingale murmurs that Roland is now with Anna, and it was Nightingale who had pushed Roland to her. Wendy is at a loss for words. Nightingale clutches Wendy's hand tightly. She had prepared herself, and knew this was the inevitable outcome, but why does seeing them together still hurt so much? Watching her like this, Wendy's heart aches too. She holds her trembling body. Nightingale has always been a strong woman, never showing fear in the face of any enemy. But in front of emotions, she is again that helpless child, and Wendy feels powerless to help her. Wendy can only hug her and gently pat her shoulder, telling her, if you feel hurt, it's okay to cry. Nightingale shakes her head, her voice muffled, saying that she had sworn never to cry again when she left the Garland family. Her voice gets lower and lower, finally almost inaudible. Wendy feels a growing warmth and moisture on her chest, but even so, not a single sob escapes Nightingale. She is resisting fiercely, her shoulders trembling, her grip tightening. Nightingale says firmly that she hasn't cried. Wendy closes her eyes, starting to regret some of the things she said to Nightingale. Staying by his side is a simple answer. In fact, most witches will stay by Roland's side because they have nowhere to go. Not many men could accept a woman who can't bear children and can't pass down the lineage. This was a universal fact all the witches understood. However, the most important thing about staying by one side is the distance between them. Like the sun, everyone can bathe in the light it brings, but the closer one wishes to get, the more likely they are to get burnt. And Nightingale clearly wishes to do more than just watch from afar. Wendy knows this is not an easy path to follow. Softly, she suggests to Nightingale that perhaps she should let go. Even if Nightingale steps back, she still has her sisters to accompany her. A long silence makes time seem to solidify at this moment. Several times, Wendy can't help but want to speak again, but the words ultimately fall back before they leave her mouth. Until Nightingale lifts her head. There's a slight redness around her eyes, but the tears are gone. Nightingale says she won't give up, no matter what. She wants to stay by Roland's side to the very end. This is her answer. Several days later, the wedding of the Chief Knight Carter and the Star of the Western Territory, May, took place in the castle garden. Everyone came to attend, even the busy chief alchemist, Kyle. Lily scattered petals and everyone offered their blessings to the new couple. Anna caught a petal from the sky. Just as Roland was asking Anna if she liked such weddings, suddenly, a bunch of petals fell from the sky. Lightning scratched her head, saying it was an accident. Roland helplessly looked up at the two little girls in the sky. Roland then looked at the two main characters for today. May appeared in the garden in a pure white wedding dress, and Carter, the other protagonist of this wedding, was dressed in a black suit. They stood together. They seemed like a match made in heaven. Barav, acting as a witness, read the new wedding procedure written by Roland. First, the couple exchanged rings. He looked down at the notebook and then told the new couple to kiss. There was a wave of cheers, especially from Eileen, who excitedly shook Ferlin and clapped for May, pulling Ferlin to cheer for May as well. Lightning said, "Isn't it just a kiss?" Every time her father came back from an adventure, he had to be kissed by Maid several times. Scroll blushed a bit, asking Roland if it was really okay to set this procedure. Roland said this was a special case, not every newlywed couple had to do so. After all, it was for publicity, the more eye-catching, the better. Saying this, he looked at Soraya, telling her to make sure to capture this moment in detail. Soraya's magic pen shone brightly, showing great interest in capturing this special moment. For the kissing, Carter seemed a bit nervous, and after a moment of stillness, it was eventually May who took the initiative, tiptoed, and kissed him. The garden immediately burst into a round of warm applause. Roland stepped out of the crowd, came to the two of them, and congratulated the newly married couple. Roland patted Carter's shoulder and gave him 2 days off. Then, the wedding ended with the lively sound of simulated fireworks. Anna watched the two happily, and Roland came over, held Anna's hand, and told her that their day would come sooner or later. In the afternoon, Barav came to report to work. Roland also had to plan to announce the newly established city in Changdu Stronghold at the same time. The messenger had been sent out and should reach Changdu Stronghold soon. The sun had risen halfway, and Roland walked to the city wall. Seeing the prince appear, the noisy conversations below quickly turned into uniform cheers, and the townspeople raised their hands. Waves seemed to surge through the crowd. Both sides of the city wall were filled with a dense crowd, the total number of people estimated to be over 20,000, meaning most of the town's residents had gathered here at this moment. Roland's voice clearly reached every resident's ears. Everyone who came here knew today was an important day because this town was about to become a real city. The original inhabitants of the border town consider the month of the demons to be a horrifying experience. However, they have now firmly settled here, defeated Duke Ryan, who threatened the peace of the Western Territory, expelled the church, and successfully resisted Timothy's attacks. Timothy has launched wars throughout the country, turning the South and the Eastern territories into battlefields and chaos. Hearing this resonates with those who fled their homes to come to border town. Remembering their home and cities were being plundered, where the acts of knights were no different from bandits, even more excessive, and children being abducted and forced into the royal army at the young age of 10. Roland promised that such tragedies would not occur again, and the new city was built for this purpose. Only by uniting more people can they keep malicious enemies out and make them pay for their arbitrary acts. Roland pauses and promises that he won't abandon his people and will stay here even when Grey Castle is unified. Barav looked at Roland with surprise. Roland continues, declaring this place will become the new capital of Grey Castle, where the kingdom will be reborn. He believes that even if boundless winter arrives, this city will still be warm as spring. After a brief pause, he raises his right hand. From today, Border Town and Changdu Stronghold will merge into one, and the new city will be named the City of Neverwinter. The citizens watched the new flag being raised and everyone started cheering, shouting out loud, "Long live Neverwinter!" Tilly watches the cheering residents, feeling a surge of emotion. The seeds of Roland's revolution have been sown, and one day, Roland will witness this spark turn into a raging fire that will sweep across the entire continent. Meanwhile, in the higher level of the Holy Hall, Zero sits on a sofa, slowly reading the latest news. After becoming the Pope, Zero has felt more at ease. She's not tense about the increasingly approaching divine war. Instead, there's a hint of anticipation. Few people can catch Zero's attention, and Roland Wimbledon just happens to be the only mortal who interests her now. She recalls from Garcia's memories that a mate of the fourth prince had once poisoned him with a fatal poison, but for some reason, it had no effect. Did the maid deceive Garcia, or is the present Roland Wimbledon no longer the fourth prince of the past? The transformation of the fourth prince is too dramatic, so Zero believes that something must have happened with the new fourth prince. Nevertheless, Roland Wimbledon must fall under the church's control, or rather, become a part of her. Zero can't help but lick her lips. She can't wait to have Roland. Isabella soon walks over, massaging her neck. Every day she is frustrated dealing with those meetings and bickering with those old men. Zero says that although witches are the essence of the church, without those men, they wouldn't be able to easily amass such resources to achieve their ultimate goal. Zero comforts Isabella, pouring her a cup of tea, and inquires about the progress of pill manufacturing. Yawning, Isabella mentions they have approximately 400,000 pills produced. She then asks if Zero really intends to engage all the civilians in a battle against the demons. Millions of people could deplete Hermes' resources in a short time. Besides, Isabella paused. But Zero urges her to go on. Isabella followed up saying, besides, victory isn't guaranteed. After consuming the first pill, the consumption of pills can't be stopped. What if the demons decided to not attack them? Consuming fewer pills would be ineffective, and consuming more would be a waste. Zero shakes her head, saying Isabella doesn't understand her intentions. She never planned to let the civilian army defend Hermes. She believes the final battle should be at the ruins of Takira. Isabella looks at Zero incredulously as she realizes that Zero plans to take the offensive. Zero calmly states that what they lack most is time. According to the Holy Book, the gates of hell would only open when the red moon descends. The tower referred to in the books isn't constructed by the demons, the tower is growing by itself. This was only mentioned in the personal notes of the Federation's top 3 seats. The demon's expansion must be based on the towers capable of producing red mist, and currently, the locations where the towers have appeared are all above God's stone mines. From the personal notes, they've noticed that below the tower, a giant monster larger than the tower base itself is corroding God's stone, transforming it into black crystals that emit red mist. Thinking about this, Isabella feels extremely disgusted. Zero continues, once the tower is formed, small-scale raids are hard to be effective. So, their only chance is to launch a direct assault and treat it as the final battle. She doesn't know how much time they have, but what she wants to do is to use the Berserk civilian army, which outnumbers the demons, to carve a bloody path, then have the God's punishment army kill the underground giant demon beast. If successful, they will gain 400 years of time. Isabella remains silent for a while before saying that the Berserk army isn't like the God's punishment warriors. While the pills can affect their minds, they won't grant them an unbreakable will. Faced with terrifying enemies, they might still flee in fear. Zero responds that the best candidates for the Berserk civilian army would primarily be the lower echelon believers of the church, with the Judgment Army serving as the backbone. To acquire so many believers, unifying the 4 major kingdoms is the first step. When asked about the chances of success, Zero nonchalantly says perhaps 30%, or maybe 50%. Regardless, staking the fate of all humanity in this gamble, risking the few for the greater good only excites Zero. Isabella sighs, expressing her hope that Zero is right. She then asks, what would Roland, the 4th Prince of Grey Castle, do? Zero frowns, asking Isabella if she thinks Roland can win over her. Isabella recalls that Archbishop Taefun reported that the Pure One sent to Grey Castle hasn't sent any updates, almost as if they all vanished. Additionally, they've lost a Pure One in the royal capital, a candidate for bishop, and the cathedral at Changgu Stronghold. Since the church began moving against the 4 major kingdoms, they had never encountered so many setbacks. It seemed that dealing with the western region always led to their defeat, and Isabella pauses before suggesting that it almost felt as if the gods were favoring and protecting Roland. Zero abruptly bangs on the table and tells Isabella to shut up, glaring at her. She declares that Isabella knows nothing of the gods and insists that Roland is merely a mortal. His knowledge and schemes will, in the end, become a part of her. Regardless of what the 4th Prince can achieve, she and the church will do better. When the church's army invades the western region of Grey Castle, Isabella realizes who is the true favorite of the gods. Isabella looks at Zero, seeing her like this for the first time and not knowing what to say. Finally, she remarks that Zero is becoming more and more like a pope. Zero understands the implication in Isabella's words but cannot explain to her that no matter who becomes the pope and regardless of their original intentions and ideologies, undergoing the divine prayer room will bring about unimaginable changes. It is there that Zero realizes that gods do truly exist.